I invite Colonel Hutsulyak, the spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Greetings. The information on the events in the area of United Forces operation during the 7th of May and as of today, the 8th of May. The situation at the confrontation line was tense but controlled by the units of the United Forces. The military actions lasted along the whole demarcation line. The intensity of enemy's provocations has not lowered down. Russian occupational forces continue to actively shell at our defense positions. They are using the cannon FA, which is prohibited by Minsk agreements. Also, they're violating the norms of international humanitarian law. The enemy doesn't stop to shell at the residential sector of Zaitsevo. In Lugansk sector, there were 20 shellings by enemy registered. Mostly this was near Zaitsevo, Novotoshkinsky and Novozvanivka. Shelling from cannon FA, which is prohibited by Minsk agreements. They were shelling 4 times at our strongholds near Zaitsevo and Novoteshkivsk. 66 shoots were made in our direction. Our positions were shelled at from 120 and 82 millimeter mortars near Zaitsevo and Novotoshkivsk, as well as near Krymsk, Luhansk, Novoluhansk and Svetlodarsk. The enemy was actively shelling at our strongholds from grenade launchers and small arms of different calibers. In total, 120 mortar mines were launched at our positions. At 5:40 p.m., the militants of Russian Occupational Administration, violating the norms of international humanitarian law, started firing at Zaitsevo. 27 artillery shells hit the residential sector. The units of United Forces provide assistance to local population. In the Donetsk sector, there were 38 enemy shellings registered, mostly from small arms, large caliber machine guns and grenade launchers of different types. Enemy was most active near Avdiivka, Marinka, Vodina and Shirokina. Also, they were firing in the direction of our strongholds near Verkhnyotoretsky, Hnutovo, Kamenka, Nevelska, Opetna, Pavlopil, Piski, Pishchevik and Butivka coal mine. Near Piski, the enemy used mortars of 82 millimeter caliber. 8 enemy's mines were launched. In total, 58 enemy shellings were registered at the contact line. Last 24 hours defined as the precise shellings. The militants made 66 shellings from the artillery of 122 millimeters and 130 mines from the mortars of 120 and 82 millimeter caliber. The servicemen of the armed forces of Ukraine were actively defending. Our defenders 27 times started firing in response, using only allowed by Minsk agreements ammunition. During the last 24 hours, 2 defenders were wounded. As to the situation today and the 8th of May, near the sector of response to armed aggression from Russian Federation in Donetsk and Lugansk regions. At night, at about 1 a.m. in Lugansk sector, the Russian occupational forces launched 10 shells of the caliber 152 millimeters near Laskutivka. Also, they shelled 122 millimeter shells near Zalizna and Popasna. In total, there were 33 artillery shells registered. Also, the the enemy was shelling 120 millimeter caliber mortars near Zoloto and Troitske. At night, it was they were firing near Novozhvanivka, Katerinivka, and Krymska. In the Donetsk sector, the enemy was active from 1 till 5 a.m., shelling at our strongholds from small arms, large caliber machine guns, and grenade launchers. They were shelling at the positions near Pishevik, Shirokino, Vodina, Verkhny Teretsky, and Gnutovo in total till 9 a.m. 11 precise shellings were registered at our positions. 43 artillery shells and more than 40 mortar mines of different calibers were launched. We would like to emphasize that the situation is under the control of our servicemen of United Forces. Other important news in the interview with the editor of the chief editor of Obozrevatelь UA, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, the General Stepan Poltorak, mentioned that the Russian Federation formed the powerful group on the border of Ukraine. There are about 80,000 of personnel, 900 tanks, more than 1,000 artillery systems, more than 400 salvo fire systems. The Russia restored the three armies, the task of which was to create tension in Europe. The Minister of Defense mentioned that in so-called LDPR, there are two artillery units based, which are subordinate to the 8th Army of the Southern Military District of Russian Federation. The trainings and exercises are taking place according to Russian standards. The above-mentioned terrorist units participate in comprehensive program of preparation of Russian armed forces, and they are practically part of the armed forces of Russian Federation. In more detail, you can read the interview of the Minister of Defense, Stepan Poltorak, at the Obozrevatelь UA website and at the official website of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. This is all the information. Any questions? Ukrainian news. I would like to ask, this operation of the United Forces is taking place for 10 days. Has the nature of conducting war changed? Both on Russian side and our side, and what's the situation on the eve of the 9th May? That's such a date, and usually it's somehow reflected at the front. I will start from the second part. Yesterday, the briefing, the head of the headquarters mentioned that the investigation is taking place all the time. We know about the movements of Russian occupational forces. We monitor that, and we are ready to any situation. I believe that the armed forces have proven that by their actions and by their blood. As to the first part of your question, you know that recently the number of shellings from Russian occupational forces was increased, and that's supported actively. They're supported actively by the Russian Federation. They're supplying weapons and military equipment to them. The number of shellings at residential, peaceful areas increased along the confrontation line. We believe that these are the militants of the Russian occupational forces. They do it on purpose in order to accuse and discredit the armed forces of Ukraine during the change of the format of the operation from anti-terrorist to the operation of United Forces. I believe that people see from where the shells are coming, but the armed forces of Ukraine are ready to any provocations and are always keeping the situation under the control. One question from me: is there the updated information in the result of the shellings at Zaitsevo yesterday? Not yet. One more question. You mentioned that Russian occupational forces are shelling from the artillery, which is prohibited by Minsk agreements. And what do you mean? And ours are responding using the allowed weapons. The response is always adequate. We are always sticking to Minsk agreements. We are responding only by small arms, by grenade launchers, by mortars of 82mm caliber, which are allowed by Minsk agreements. This caliber is allowed. However, I cannot remember when for the last time our defenders were using mortars in response. But according to the press center of the headquarters of United Forces, we see the information that in the result of adequate response and active defense, some militants were either wounded or killed. Once you have no more questions, we'll finish. Thank you.